So if you don't know me already, good morning. Thanks for joining. I'm Pam, founder and CEO of Fit and Fun Playscapes, and I'll be your host and moderator for our first ever Zoom meeting. It's discussions on school reentry, a candid talk about student physical activity, wellness, and emotional concerns. I know that's a mouthful, but we've got a lot to cover, and I'd like to thank you all for joining us. We're so excited. This is the first time we've conducted a Zoom meeting of this size, so bear with us if things get crazy. My Wi-Fi already went out twice this morning for no reason at all. I think we're based in New York, so I think the cable companies are recovering from the storms last week. Thank goodness we are fortunate to have the support and cooperation of this group of seasoned panelists, which I will introduce shortly. So I'm pretty sure we are in good hands. Sherry is going to be working on our slideshow, so you'll hear me call her name. And Todd is going to be reviewing some questions that you can post. He's our community and content manager. Sherry, can you go to slide 2? Great. Before we get started, and we will start in just a few moments, I wanted to open on a personal note by saying that as a parent and CEO of Fit and Fun Playscapes, thank you for not throwing in the towel. As you well know, schools across the world have unprecedented challenges, and many teachers, especially those considered outside of the core curriculum subjects, have been considered non-essential to a student's educational needs during this pandemic, and that is truly a shame. I'm a parent of 3 boys, 2 of which have ADD and 504 plans, and I cannot express to you how important physical activity and classroom breaks have been to their success. Their success physically, mentally, socially, emotionally, and of course academically. This is why we as a company wanted to help our fellow PE, OT, PT, and support specialists like those of you on this call. Being good listeners and learning from you all for almost 10 years now has taught us quite a lot. It taught us to be inquisitive, knowledgeable, and passionate, and I thank you all for that. It also taught us to roll up our sleeves, like you guys, think out of the box, and be the best that we can be for our customers. Our customers are ultimately the kids. Our kids, your students. I get a little choked up there because it's been quite a journey, especially these last few months. Sherry, can you go to slide 3, please? Great. So we have this poster in our office in New York. It's of an Abraham Lincoln quote, and it says, and it's one of my personal favorites, the best way to predict your future is to create it. So let's take a deep breath, belly breathe, and dive in and create it. Sherry, can you go to slide 4? Great. This meeting is set up like a speed date type of webinar. It's broken into 5 quick 10-minute segments. It's kind of like a sampler plate or a flight of educators for our foodies and beer drinkers out there. After all segments are over, we will dedicate the rest of the time to questions. We'll be here as long as we can to answer all your questions. During these segments, please use the Q&A icon depending on how your Zoom screen is set up, but it should be at the bottom somewhere. You could type your question in, but I'm going to ask if we can hold the questions until the end of our meeting. That should bring us close to the hour, and if all goes well, that gives us some time to organize them and select as many and all as possible to answer. When you type in your question, please provide your state, school, district, or company, whatever you're comfortable with. Hope that makes sense. We will try to answer all your questions, as I am sure you have many. If we do not answer your question during the meeting or you have to run, please type it in anyway. We will definitely keep a list of all the questions and answers and email you those, as well as resource links within just a few days. We'll also include a link to a recording of the meeting so you can sit back, relax, or do some squats or lunges, whatever. So we're going to start. We're going to start off the discussions with Dr. Tim Davis, then on to Dr. Stephanie Adams, followed by Marie Ann Stockton, then Ms. Lori Biffarella, and then Ms. Erin Dressel. Okay, let's begin. Slide 5, please. Dr. Tim, take it away.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. It is really an honor to be here, not only with my colleagues on this panel, but with everybody who's Zoomed in or WebExed in or whatever we're doing today. We really appreciate it. And I want to thank Pam for the invitation to take the opportunity to talk about adapted PE, which is just a great honor. So what I'd like to do is just simply say who I am. My name is Tim Davis. I'm a associate professor at SUNY Cortland in the Department of Physical Education. I'm also the director of the Sensory Integration Motor Sensory Lab at SUNY Cortland, and there we work primarily with kids with autism, sensory processing disorder, and a variety of other sensory needs in giving them opportunity to move, play, engage, and more importantly, manage a lot of the behavior. So if we could jump to the next slide, I'll talk to you a little bit about kind of where we're headed. Before I do that, though, I want to give a shout out to my good friend Keiki, who is over in North Carolina, down in North Carolina. I'm also the chair of the Adapted PE National Standards Project, and Keiki and others, many others, have been so involved down there. So keep up the great work in North Carolina for Adapted PE. So today I wanted to just share with you some issues related to, kind of all the topics that are going on. And I only have 10 minutes, so I'm just going to skip across a few of these, and my colleagues, these wonderful panelists, will dive in a little bit deeper in each of these areas. But first off, we're going to talk about reentry guidelines and kind of what those things are as it relates to children with disabilities. I'm going to run past some first day issues and concerns that I keep seeing, that I keep hearing about, that I keep talking with my family and my colleagues and my in-laws and who are teachers and all kinds of stuff. I'm going to share with you briefly about sensory integration and some anxieties, just to bring some thoughts to bear, and our other panelists will dive in deeper there too. And last but not least, really what the glue that brought all this together is Pam, and how these sensory pathways that we love to use and love to employ and do and engage ultimately help kids self-regulate. So those are my topics today. If we could jump to the next slide. So these reentry guidelines that have been posted and that are out there, I know a lot of people are actively looking for information, and I would encourage all of you, obviously those in physical education, to go to Shape America. Look at their reentry guidelines. They're global. They're well written, of course, like most things there, and they're written from a perspective that kind of give you the basic guidelines. I did provide the link to that, so if you get the opportunity afterwards, make sure you run and take a look at the Shape America reentry guidelines as it's specific to physical education. As part of the New York State APERD Association, I was lucky enough to be involved with the development of the guidelines, and my specific area and my colleagues who helped me write this piece is on adapted PE. And so the New York State entry guidelines for PE has a specific component that talks about adapted PE, and a lot of states quite haven't gotten there yet. So I'd encourage you, if you haven't looked at those, make sure you look at those. And do we have that one page from the New York State guidelines? I'm not sure if we do or not.
I believe so. Did you try clicking that link, Tim?
Oh, I didn't. Yeah, I can't.
You know what? If not, we'll put that in the resource.
All good. All good. So moving forward, I just want to highlight a couple things there in that particular document. That document speaks to the need for placement, really speaks to where kids are with disabilities are supposed to be in regard to the services that are outlined on their IEP. And that those placement options, there should be a variety of options, are really important to consider as we re-enter. We don't want to lose sight of where our kids are supposed to be within the least restricted environment. We also don't want to lose sight of assessment, right? The reality of assessment. And there's been a lot of discussion as of late about the validity of assessments that are videotaped, that are virtual, such as the TGMB2 and or 3. But at the end of the day, all of that information is important in terms of screening. and helping you as a teacher have just a basic understanding of where your kids are at, some sort of baseline guide as far as where your kids are at, and have they lost skill sets over time, over the summer, over the last 5 months, or, you know, and it helps you decide as far as where you're going to be teaching or how you're going to be teaching moving forward. The last is the services. We don't want to lose sight of the fact that when we're bringing kids back in, that services are reduced. So be a strong advocate for your kids with disabilities, especially physical education. That movement component is so critical. And in those guidelines, the New York State guidelines, we talk about those specific pieces. So please take a look at those. Last but not least, I want to just kick some ideas around, practical ideas for using visual cues to make sure kids know where to stand and what to do. In the New York State guidelines, we're talking about not 6 feet space, but 12 feet. We need 12 feet to be physically active and to engage. If I'm going to swing a bat, or if I'm going to use any kind of implement, maybe not, or if I'm just going to be moving, I need more than 6 feet. Right?
Tim, can I interrupt you? Say that again. How much do you need?
Oh, hey, I need a lot. I need a lot of space.
I know.
I need a lot of space.
Because everybody's saying 6 feet, and it's like, no.
Yeah, so the kids that you say run around the corner, he's going to keep going. So 12 feet is the minimum. And you have to have some sort of visual cue to make sure kids know 12 feet. It's not just an arm length away. It's not personal space. They need that visual spot. They need that visual cue on the ground that says, this is where I need to be, and I'm good here, right? I'm physically distanced here. That helps address anxiety, helps address a lot of things. So we're going to unpack that a little bit more with some of the other presenters. But let's jump to the next slide. So as I think about going back to school, not only at the college level, but obviously teaching kids, because in the lab we work a lot with, kids face-to-face, has this issue of conformity. There's been a lack of that, obviously, in the last 5 months. Kids have been at home in a very unregulated environment, if you will, not a lot of teacher-driven rules, right? There's often been a lack of continuity in terms of getting exposure to new environments. There was a really interesting piece that Sanjay Gupta spoke about kids getting COVID because they're now no longer sheltered. They're going out of that home environment. Wow, that just blew my mind away, right? When we start looking at the increase of kids getting this virus. But at the end of the day, when we talk about environments and continuity of environments, kids with disabilities have difficulty transitioning often from one space to another. So I like to have those visual cues and those markers to help kids do that. And there's a lot of brand new markers in the schools. Arrows, do this, don't do that, mask, no mask. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to deal with. Obviously, cleanliness, that's absolutely critical. You're going to be washing your hands a lot. We're going to be wearing face masks, whether we're wearing face masks in physical education or not. The distance in terms of continuity, 6 feet, 12 feet, how many feet, where am I supposed to be? Kids are really going to struggle with that. And if they're anything like the kids that I work with, they're going to want to be next to you because of the anxiety and the fear and the concern that they have. They don't know where to go often, especially if they're pre-K, kindergarten, first grade, and they're new to the school, or they're making the transition from elementary to middle school, or middle school to high school if it's all virtual. Who knows where they're going to be. Last but not least, I think this is a major issue that teachers are going to deal with. We have to self-report just to walk in the building. No, I don't have a fever today. I've had exposure or whatever. We have to self-report that information. Come down a level. Kids have to be reporting that type of information as well. We have to ask our kids, hey, how are you feeling today? And when we talk about kids with disabilities, the primary piece to communicate is with families, right? Is with their care providers and the staff, the paraprofessionals who often work with them throughout the day. So it's really, really important that we establish a consistent and meaningful way in terms of communicating. And there's going to be all those levels that you're going to have to navigate all the way down to our kiddos the kids that we're working with directly to find out how they're doing day to day. We'll jump to the next slide. So this is one of my favorite things to talk about. It's sensory integration. I love to talk about all this stuff, and a lot of people don't know that, there's 8 senses, and in our sensory integration lab, and in all the sensory pathways and things that we use, we focus on 3 things, and we have 2 of them over there, vestibular, proprioceptive, tactile. Those 3 are really critical, but a lot of people don't know about interoception, and interoception is that internal sensation that speaks to my stomach's upset or I don't feel well, and anxiety will drive some of those real concerns. So I think it's really important not only to, number one, understand our kiddos in relationship to what they're going to experience on a sensory level, visually, auditorily, certainly from a vestibular and proprioceptive standpoint, which is a lot of what we do in physical education. And there's 2 really, really great resources listed on this slide. One is certainly is the SPD STAR organization that speaks to these 8 sensory issues that a lot of occupational therapists are engaged with. But then there's a really cool little YouTube there that you want to check out where you can see some of these things in action. But everything I do, if I've got a little guy or a little girl who's struggling with emotion, I'm all about vestibular. I provide proprioception, which is heavy work. I give them opportunity to do movement, right, and explore and expand how they're engaging. So here's just some quick examples. Great little sensory pathway there on the left, using the wall, using the floor. Proprioception there in the middle, as well as my little girl Quinn on the right there. She's got some vestibular things going on. She's actually in a giant salad bowl with some sensory pieces built into it. This is in our lab. This is one-on-one, maybe not necessarily reality in what you're dealing with in physical education, but fire questions to us. We're happy to answer and go from there. Jump to the next slide. Watching my time. So again, kind of thinking about this, these are some additional examples and resources that you can look at. The sensory room concept, a lot of school districts are moving in this direction where they have a dedicated space for sensory motor activity. And the EduTopia website there, the link there does a wonderful example. Call out to Connecticut and to the program there, absolutely wonderful sensory room. And it's used throughout the day for all kids, not just kids with disabilities, to come and address some of those real sensory issues. Obviously, the next one has to deal with sensory pathways and what those look like. And there's some great examples there of the way kids are moving, not just moving because of the visual cue, but they're really getting a chance to explore their whole body. And that's the critical part, is if I'm reserved and, and I'm unsure, I can still be successful as I move on the pathway. The last part that I love has to do with the vinyl rollouts. And the rollouts are really great for me because I can use these rollouts that are, and they're on the website there, and there's a YouTube about them, but I can use them in my gym to help me observe kids in terms of screening. I could watch kids move their body, hop, jump, skip, leap, all the fundamental motor skills, and I could use that as a tool to help me initially collect data on even ancillary data on the abilities of our kids and kind of where they're at in this in present time. And I think we have some videos of that as well, which I really, really like to share. When I think about continuity of these pathways, I think about it from the classroom. What kind of pathway are kids walking through? Now, desks are all changed. They're all moved around. Am I going to go up to the board? Am I not going to go up to the board? Is there a plexiglass sheet in front of me or not? These are all really, really important things that teachers and kids with disabilities need to understand. So the continuity between the classroom, the hallway, which like we had a good example there, to the gym, recess outside, the pathway or the sidewalk going to that recess area can all be connected with visual symbols, and some of our other presenters are going to talk about visual symbols. They can all be connected to help our kiddos who have some of that anxiety issue, who have certain specific disabilities, understand that, oh, I recognize that. I can do that. I've done it before. This is fun. I can move and I can play and I can feel comfortable in my skin or in my shoes, like I like to say. Being confident in your shoes is really our ultimate goal. So we can jump to the next slide. So for me, the three top takeaways really here are coordination of services. We've got to collaborate, and I think the silver lining with COVID and the whole WebEx, Zoom, all these things, because I had a steep learning curve, trust me on that, is being able to communicate with OT, with PT, with classroom teachers in a really strong and powerful interdisciplinary way. I think that is absolutely wonderful. And we talk about high leverage practices. We talk about evidence-based practices. Well, at the end of the day, the best approach, getting these services together and just communicating, right? Talking about our kiddos and what their needs are. The next one, actually, I'm going to jump to the communication one first. Communication, we just established that, right? How important that is. But being able to communicate with our kiddos, so I gave you a link on maybe some thoughts or ideas that you haven't thought about on best approaches to talk to our kids with disabilities. So if you've got a student with visual impairment or hearing impairment or some other unique characteristic, there's some good little tips on how to do that. And certainly the last one is that environmental continuity. How do we create an environment that has the visual cues that they're familiar with that tell them what to do and where to go without having, somebody over here telling them all the time what to do. So they feel confident when they're at school. They feel confident getting off the bus. Oh, I recognize that path. I do that every day. So I'm going to do that every day, and on the way, I feel good today. So I'm going to do hopscotch, or I don't feel that all that great. So I'm just going to shuffle through it. It's all good. But it's things that I see and things that I know. And it's that continuity that is so important. So those are my three takeaways. Thanks, everybody, for letting me chat. I look forward to questions, and thanks for having me, Pam.
Great. Thanks so much, Tim. That was really insightful, as always, understandable, and your passion always shines through when you're talking about adaptive PE or PE in general. I hope everybody got some good ideas there. I do see a few questions here about assessment, but let's give Tim a virtual round of applause with big hands, and we'll move on to Dr. Stephanie Adams. Dr. Stephanie, you're on.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay, Pam?
Yes. Yes.
Perfect. Well, so first I just wanted to say thank you and to you, Pam, and also I just love that I'm a part of this panel with the professionals that have the same mission as I have for the many years that I've been practicing. And to follow Tim is pretty cool because he loves talking about sensory integration, as he mentioned, and so he's an OT at heart, I think, with all the things that he's learned over the years in working with kids with disabilities. So overall, I've had about 26 years of experience as an OT, and it's really been my passion to be able to help parents and teachers, anyone working with those children, to be able to help support their learning. But then again, I'm going to talk about mind, body, and movement and how that's integrated. And currently, I am working with OTA students to be able to support them as they become future practitioners. And I'm an OTA program director at St. Catherine University. So, next slide. First, I just want to talk about children children with unique abilities typically have experienced different. But now, all of these kids coming back to school are going to experience different. And so that is a really big challenge for all the educators within our schools. And it's a new educational model, but it kind of looks a little bit different physically. And so that space that the kids are going to be in on a daily basis, as Tim mentioned. And so those challenges they may have to understand those components and how it really still is school, still learning, still have to, at the end of the day, practice all those things that they're needing to focus on with their educational journey, but with a little bit different setup. And overall, these children may have a lot of uncertainty. And so as educators, it's going to be important for us to be able to support them. And they have many things that they've been experienced since spring in that big contextual world of what's been going on. And next. So really kids may wonder, and they may certainly, one of the things I was thinking of, it's so important to really talk to the children, to certainly talk about these changes in general. And so they can understand the purposes of the physical distancing or, why there's different things in the classroom that have to be done with the extra cleaning and all of that, and really make that connection as the children are very smart and they know that things are different, but really to just be honest with them and try to make those connections, really linking it to being healthy and having themselves stay healthy as well as all their friends. And so another big thing is really to have that open discussion and that platform for them to maybe have those conversations. We don't know what they've been experiencing since the beginning of spring, and so they may have some personal things that they've had a grandparent who has been really sick, or whatever the situation is. It's important for us to, as educators, to be able to support them and to be able to really listen to them, because they probably have seen a lot more than we have imagined, and so it's nice to be able to have that connection. And then the other thing is social stories. There are so many really cool resources that I've seen come across Facebook and LinkedIn of educators developing different various kind of really short, simple stories that make that connection for children to understand, what is different. And social stories are obviously a very big thing that we've used with kids with special needs, but also this is just relevant for all children. And next. So let's talk a little bit about feelings and how they're connected to the mind and body. Anxiety. So we as adults all have anxiety at some point or another, and actually anxiety is not a bad thing, believe it or not. But children who have anxiety, we know that it can impact their educational journey. It's very common in the U.S. I just threw in this statistic that I know that at least 25% of children between ages 13 and 18 are actually diagnosed with anxiety disorders. But with that being said, a lot of these kids that are coming to school may have these challenges of just some underlying anxiety and that uncertainty piece. So we know as therapists, but as educators as well, as the whole body can be impacted. So with learning, as well as those things, those components of memory and how they plan, how they keep their attention during class, and have emotional control in how they relate to things. And so thinking and actual learning can be, which can in turn have some behaviors. So all of that is intertwined together.
Stephanie, if I can interrupt you for a moment. Yeah, my 11-year-old, he's at that age, so he's going into 6th grade, where he doesn't really know how to express how the anxiety that he's feeling. He's hearing conversations that he doesn't really understand. And then, he's nervous about going back and trying to kind of keep it all together. My mask on, and I got to stay focused, which he has an easy deal already. And, so there's a lot going on for all of us, but I feel like the young kids struggle the most because they don't know how to express it and cope with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, again, it's just as an educator or therapist or parent, just being extra sensitive to that, because kids don't know how to express, but as parents, maybe we can write ask the right questions, to be able to guide them, to be able to talk about it, because it is just what we hope isn't the new norm in the future, but, there's a lot of differences. And so, as I said, that not just kids with challenges, every child is going to be going through this, and us as adults as well. So there's a lot of variables involved for sure. Okay, so next slide. So this is what we can do. And I think that this is like one of my favorite slides of my presentation. So we need to remember how it feels to have uncertainty as adults, because we all have it, like I said, on any level of anxiety, but I feel like we need to kind of step back into those child's shoes. And so we really need to know how we present ourselves, and that's impactful for those children. And so we need to use that positive mindset. It is hard, as we've had a lot of changes as these teachers in the classroom are going to have so many things to keep up with, extra little things. And I've noticed that even just going to a restaurant, and all the different things they've had added to their plate to be able to make sure that they're doing the best for their customers. And so, and as well as these going back to school. And so I feel like my favorite line is keep the calm on. And as the picture shows, I just feel like that is so important. Just maybe that moment of take that deep breath, take and just kind of stop and just really think, and try to really refocus, because there's a lot of things that are going on at one time. Okay, next slide. So this is my therapist hat that I decided to put this into the presentation, but because I know, and research shows that play is so valuable and so important for children. This information is just to remind us that the mind and the body and movement are all interconnected, and that if we have children explore and engage in movement, it is so valuable for them to be able to learn and to help support those challenges they have if they are a little bit anxious and have a hard time getting their mind really focused. And so I won't go through that list specifically, but it's just a little reminder and a snippet of all the things across those three areas that are so important for us to continue, because it's going to be a different thing when we all go back to school, but it's also valuable because the children need to learn and they need to be successful in that, because that is the end product that we mentioned. Okay, next slide. So I wanted to make sure that I put this in the presentation because, as therapists know, as I mentioned, play is so valuable and important for children. But if you put in sensory components and you put in play experiences, strong senses build motor, they build sensory, they build cognition, they build emotion regulation, they build social participation. So all of those things are interconnected and so valuable, and we can't forget that, because that's really what we're here for the children, to be able to be successful. And in any environment, we can make this happen. And so my last statement is play is essential for all children. And then the next slide. These are just my takeaways. And so my three top solutions are: let the children express, let them talk about their experiences. You may just have the start of the day that they can have a few minutes, or maybe the end of the day, to wrap it up about how they did during the day, following all the different rules and so forth. Just some touch points for the children to be able to have some expressing of it. Next, the second one is how we respond as a role model and keep that calm on. So important and so valuable for all the children that we work with. And then the last one is to help the children engage in experiences always in mind, body, and movement. Always and at all times. And that's it. So I appreciate everyone listening, and if there's any questions at the end, I will certainly be able to help support Pam in answering some of those. Thank you so much. One more, Pam, I can't hear you. Oh, yep.
I told you there might be some glitches. Of course, thank you. Thanks. I like how you broke down mind, body, movement concept, and of course, I like I love how you tied in play. I am a bullet person myself, so I really like that chart. It really spells it out clearly to me. It made a lot of sense. I think that will be really helpful for folks to think about considerations as they reopen or if they have reopened. But let's give Stephanie a virtual round of applause with are you ready? Raise the roof, because she raised the roof.
Thank you so much.
Cool. All right, next up is Lori. Take it away, Lori.
Hey, so first of all, my name is Lori Biffarella, and I teach elementary PE. I teach pre-K through fourth grades. I'm going into my 33rd year doing this, so I'm in love with my job placement. I want to thank Pam for bringing this group together. I am truly honored to be here with Tim and Stephanie and Marie Ann and Aaron, because they're phenomenal minds. And I've always felt that, you know, we only know what we know, but when you pull other minds together and you start sharing great ideas, and all of a sudden we grow. So this is going to be a great growth opportunity for all of us. And I'm hoping that if you're attending the Zoom meeting, you can throw ideas, you can also throw questions, and we all can grow a little bit more, because I'm going to be honest with you, I don't have all the answers. I'm still trying to figure this out, and I'm just honored to be a part of this. So I'm going to start with
I wish, like everybody, like we could all be on one call and we're rapid firing. That was sort of the concept here, but that just is not ascertainable with these number of people, which is great. But I love to be collaborative, and I'm looking at the questions coming in, and they're really good. Yeah.
Good. So I want to start with that first slide about reimagining what your teaching space is going to look like using the CDC guidelines and recommendations. You know, I'm just saying, like, choosing fun shapes and colors. And I just want to go back through a little history of where I started with Pam and all of this. I'm in a building that was built in the 1920s. The gym was the stage, and they would do performances on it. They'd also play basketball games on it. So the lines on the floor were very traditional and related back to like the 1940s, 1950s, and it was just volleyball, basketball, and that's about it. It was very flat. There was one day back in my college career when a professor came to me and said, your project is going to be redesign a brand new school. You can build the facility however you want it. You can put any equipment in you want. You have an unlimited budget. And I remember, this was back in the 80s, I'm like, this is unrealistic. I think I swore a little bit, but that's not important now. But I just didn't think it was realistic. Like, budgets are not, endless. We all know we live in these very tight budgets, and we have to live in these worlds with lots of restrictions, and I hated the project. One day, probably about 15 years ago, our superintendent of buildings and grounds walks into this old room that I have, because it was built back in the 20s, and he's concerned about some of the floorboards, because we've complained about the cracks and the little gaps and things that have been popping up throughout the years. So he finally got a contractor to come in and replace like 150 of the boards in the room. And the contractor came over and reassured me that, don't worry, he says, I'll put all the original paint lines back on. No worries. And all of a sudden I had a flashback to that college project. And I am like, wait a minute, we're not going to go back to that, because if you look at this next slide, that's what it was. It was black and white. It was flat. It fit the needs of some activities, but most of the activities we did had no connection or correlation to what was on the floor, and it didn't feed any creativity. So I went back to my mindset. I hope I have that project still, but we changed our floor up. You can go to the next slide. We added lots of shapes. We added lots of colors. Got to go back one. There we go. Yep, we took on the challenge. And I just went in the other day and took these pictures. So as you can see, the lines are colorful. There's shapes, there's triangles and squares. There's lots of different color shapes. And we did this 15, 20 years ago. The idea was every line had a purpose. So like the circle fits our parachute. The shapes are 6 feet apart. Flash forward to 2020, right? And when we jump rope or when we use larger implements, Tim, we go every other shape because guess what? They need space. And so here we are in 2020. I'm walking into my space and I'm feeling comfortable and I'm feeling confident because I have this already in place. But at the same time, you know, I know there's questions out there. I was reading through the questions that you had submitted earlier, and I will address them at the end. Steve and Melissa and Marty, I will get to your question about, you know, what equipment and what are you doing with the space. Charlene, I got great ideas for you, and Amy about the mask. We can talk about that too. But I need to stick with my 10-minute guideline right now. So I want to go to the next. I know there's so much to say. Okay.
I know.
So if I'm going to flash forward to the next slide. So first of all, if I didn't have those shapes on my classroom teaching area space right now, I definitely would be knocking on Pam's door because all of the Pam, what's the word I'm looking for? The stickies. I'm just going to call them stickies. All of your applications, stickers. Okay. They can create this space that I already have painted on my floor. But I know there is a possible scenario where we may be teaching PE in the classroom. And it hasn't been decided by our district yet. I know there's a potential that we might be pushed into the classroom and the children never leave the classroom, which breaks my heart for these kids. But I need to think outside the walls of the classroom because if they're not leaving the classroom, then the hallways are available to me. I'm looking for space. As again, you know, New York State health guidelines say we have to have 12 feet of space for physical activity. So maybe I can get more space in the hallway. And Sally Schulte did a really great presentation for EPW just a couple weeks ago. And I'll have a link coming at you in this chat soon. And she talked about motor labs in the hallway. And I'm going to go back to that slide because I need to focus on it. So the motor labs that she was talking about was basically using sensory pathways, immersion of skills from PE lessons, working with OTPT. Now, one thing, I'm not sure if y'all know this, but Erin, who's on the call, I am so fortunate to have Erin as the PT in my building. And Erin and Chelsea and I, like, we work collectively together. And when I heard this from Sally Schulte and I hear Tim talk about communication, it's a team effort. And thinking about putting sensory pathways or a motor lab in the hall as a mini station, if I'm doing PE in the classroom, it's just, I think that's the answer that they need in this scenario. Going to the next slide, this was Pam had sent me just a couple of the stickers because I didn't have any. And I went into school. Now, our school is under construction as well as trying to get ready for the new school year and the way it's going to look. So I wasn't allowed to stick the stickers on the floor. But this is like a corner view. And I'm just thinking how I could use these stickers. And they're so versatile. And I know that Tim said that you can also pick them up and replace them and put them in other spots. They're reusable. And I think he said they survived a Zamboni. Yeah. One time he left them out. So I'm like, I see a lot of potential in this. And then I'm going to go to the next slide. And these are my three focuses. Like keep your mind on these. Number one is keeping a relationship with your students. I mean, they need us as much as we need them, and we just have to stay connected with them. My number two was to keep your content relatable. I see so much on Twitter of people like just posting a video and letting their kids call that their assignment for the day, just do what they're doing on the video. Reimagine that. And I'm not saying the video is bad because there's a lot of great content, but how can you put yourself into the video? Can you reshoot the video with you in it, and now you're connected with your students and they would be more connected with the activity itself? The third thing I would like to recommend is teach the students. Don't just teach the lesson. I know there's talk about video recording a lesson. Like I might have to be in my building and video record a lesson, and then they're going to stream it to the remote learners in our community. And I have a real hard time with that because when I teach, I'm teaching the student in front of me, and I get a lot of feedback from that. So I'm not on board with that, but I'm still trying to figure that part out. But I'm like, I teach students, and the second part of that is really connect with their reflections and the responses. I know it's easier to do that when you're face to face, but if you're doing it remotely, try to find a platform that allows you to let the students share their experiences and their reflections of the assignments that you have shared with them. So like I said, I have lots of links to share. I'm going to start throwing them up in the chat because I know they're related to questions you asked previous. I think my time is up, and if you have more questions at the end, I'd be happy to answer. So Pam, thank you for this opportunity to be a part of this team. And
You're welcome. Thanks, Lori. I think I glitched out there a little bit. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
All good?
Hear you. Yeah. All good.
Okay, great. I told you there were some Wi-Fi issues in the area, so my apologies. But thanks, Lori. Let's give Lori a virtual round of applause with a fist pump. I think Lori nailed it using, before she and I ever met, decades before, she understood the use of color and simple graphics and a ton of creativity, and she uses that as a management tool with her students. I also like that you talked about the collaboration with your PT and OT, and I envision now more than ever the schools are strapped for money, and if those groups come together and kind of go to their administration with a project in mind that touches on all these disciplines, it's kind of a twofer, it's multi-use, and so I think that's important. So we totally get that. Thank you. Thanks, Lori. Let's move on to Marie Ann. Marie Ann, you're on.
All right, thank you, Pam. And I would just like to start by saying, wow, just hearing everyone else's presentation and the passion that everyone here has is really incredible. I'm excited to be able to do the interdisciplinary, hearing from different perspectives. I think that as a behavior analyst, it's very easy to just kind of get in my field and just focus it like this. So to hear from everyone, it's just been great. So I'd like to just start by introducing myself. I am licensed through New York State Education Department in Behavior Analysis, and I'm a board-certified behavior analyst. I currently lead a team of behaviorally trained staff who help support services through my agency at Access CNY. We offer a lot of different programs, behavioral programs, which include parent trainings, community habilitation, adult residential settings, preschool, and finally, we run a small applied behavior analysis program that serves up to 8 individuals, and we provide 20 to 30 hours of ABA services a week. Within the 20 to 30 hours, we provide the support in home, in our clinic space, and then offer school training as well. So I'm just kind of in a lot of different worlds. It's quite an interesting job. You wear a lot of hats, I'll say.
I'm sure.
So I usually enter the picture when families or schools have kind of run out of all the answers as to why their child or their student is having a difficult time following the rules or otherwise fitting the mold of an ideal student. And I'm hoping to be able to discuss some strategies that can be helpful when supporting students with ASD, autism spectrum disorder, transition into a rather unique school year. Because we're limited to 15 minutes, just about, maybe even 10, there's a lot, so please feel free to ask some questions, and I'd love to be able to help support anyone that, if there are questions outside of this presentation, please reach out to me. I'd love to be able to help support you.
Thank you.
So to start, I'd like to share a little glimpse of what it was like at my house from March until the end of school year. So you could go ahead and go to the next slide.
Wow.
So when New York State was asked to pause, our school districts closed down, so that meant my daughter was home. We were trying to establish that remote learning. Our agency was established as an essential service, but we did suspend almost all of our in-person services for about 8 weeks because we just had a lot of staff that were, not sure if they were comfortable coming in and being able to support, and it was just, we kind of lost a lot of staff. We attempted to deliver remote services. Some kids benefited from it great, but, I think that after about 8 weeks, we all realized that we needed to start this back because a lot of our kids were regressing. So to go back to the slide that you're seeing now, you can see that there is my daughter who's sitting in the hamper eating snacks, and she's on the iPad. And another picture, she's on a couch binge watching Fuller House. This is a day-to-day kind of schedule. There are times we just bought crazy stuff on Amazon. And we knew we were really losing our minds when she wore a head scratcher as a hat all day.
Nice. Nice. I can relate.
The main thing that was not happening is any type of real structure or real routine. I really was trying to balance doing 40 hours of work at home, trying to do the remote learning. I think you can see that in one of the pictures, we started out doing some of the assignments at the table, and then by the end of the year, the picture of her laying on the floor, that was our workspace. And I'm pretty sure the cat was doing a lot of her assignments at that point. So it was just a little out of control. But I think that everyone's just did their best during that time. I don't mind admitting how my day was because I don't think that I was the only parent that was experiencing that. And when we reopened our clinic to direct services, a lot of the families I spoke with basically experienced a very similar situation. The common theme was the lack of structure and a desperate need to just get moving and out of the house. A lot of iPad time, a lot of binge watching was happening. So you can go ahead to the next slide. So how do you go from structure or a setting with no structure whatsoever to a structure of how? When we reopened in-person services, we established a lot of different guidelines, including we had to stagger our schedules so that staff weren't overlapping, and as often as we can, we had the kids in different areas, or we tried not to schedule people at the same time. We had to keep each student in separate classrooms. We had an opportunity. Our preschool was actually closed down, so we had separate classrooms in our space. So we were able to put each kid in their own classroom. And then one of the biggest changes was that we were no longer promoting social skills. We needed to establish how to greet peers while maintaining the social distance. Instead of sharing and putting my turn, your turn, we really had to say, no, this is your bike to use for the day. These are your toys. We really tried to keep things separate. We went as far as even assigning separate bathrooms for each kid. Of course, we had the luxury, we had a large area for our kids, and we were able to do that. I know schools, it's going to be a little bit different. So again, our main question we knew right away was how are we going to help these students go from no structure at all to the rigid structure at our clinical space. So you could go ahead to the next slide. Yep, perfect. So a few key things that we always have in the back of our head is that behavior is never out of nowhere. Behavior doesn't just happen. There's always a reason behind it. And in the field of behavior analysis, we refer to these reasons as the functions of behavior. Those functions include escaping a task, gaining attention, gaining access to items, or just feels good. It's a sensory explanation for it. So Once we have an understanding of what the function is, or WTF, we can put
You had to
in place.
explain that one to me.
I know. I did. I sent it.
Put that slide in. I'm like, Rianne, what's WTF?
Yeah, it was, and then she was very relieved when I was like, it means what's the function, I promise. So sometimes it might be the other way around. Yeah, so once we understand the function, we can come up with replacement behaviors. We can come up with ways to react in our plans. The best intervention to implement once the behavior has actually occurred, but there are strategies that help to avoid a behavior from occurring in the first place. So, the plans can be pretty thorough, and I won't go into a lot of the details of the different intervention strategies, but one of the most common strategies, regardless of, what we've established as the function is the use of visuals. It's a proactive strategy, so we don't even have to bother with having, behavior is occurring, now what do we do? This is all in place so that we can avoid the behavior in the first place. So in addition to using visuals to promote physical activity and all of the wonderful things that Stephanie, Lori, Tim were talking about, it's important to consider how to use visual strategies to avoid the challenging behaviors in the first place. You could go ahead to the next slide. All right. So understanding how autism spectrum disorder can affect the brain is extremely helpful in understanding why a student may be trying to escape or avoid a task. A really good example of this is that ASD often impacts an individual's ability to recognize language. So that might include recalling names of objects, remembering verbal exchanges, and recognizing language. I don't know how many times I go into a home or school setting and they're just not sure. Why is the kid flapping? Why is he flapping? And, so I get a chance to observe, and I see the adult give the child some sort of verbal direction. And the child starts to flap right away and doesn't really follow that direction the first time. So the adult just repeats the directions even louder, as if it's a hearing and not necessarily a processing. So as you can imagine, that often leads to an escalation in the situation and even more challenging behavior. Once the students flap, the teacher might try to pick them up or they'll walk away, and, it just starts to escalate instead of really being proactive and being able to work through some of that. So it's important to remember it might look like the student's just not willing to follow the direction, but in reality it's the student not understanding the direction. And repeating yourself, is that what the term is? If you do the same thing over and over again, that's the definition of crazy. If it doesn't work the first time, let's come up with a better solution, another approach.
True.
So research supports that individuals with a variety of developmental disabilities, including ASD, can benefit from visual cues when teaching new skills or directions. And in return, once they understand the direction, you can completely reduce the confusion, the anxiety, and often avoid the escalation of more challenging behavior. Another major benefit of visual cues is that it does encourage independence. Once the student connects the meaning of the visual to the expectation, the student can go through her day more independently because she's reminded of the expectation through the visual, not the teacher or one-to-one support. I know right now, there are teachers, one-to-ones, and staff that are just very open to working with students, and they're comfortable if the students aren't wearing masks or if the students aren't able to understand what 6 feet, apart is. But there are other students that I'm hearing, or other teachers that I'm hearing that are having some hesitation behind that. They might have an underlying condition that makes them susceptible. So we really do want to encourage students to be more independent, especially, that's always been a huge goal of mine anyway, but especially now we really need the students to be able to follow directions without someone standing right next to them, holding their hand the entire time, and making sure they're following all of the routine of the day. And I'm sure, as many of you may know, it's not always as easy as just presenting the student with a visual, and magically the student gets it. You do need to spend some time teaching. There's a lot of evidence-based strategies that I use to help teach that, but given the limit on my time, I really can't get into all of those new rules, but please feel free to reach out. Maybe in the Q&A we can talk about those strategies as well.
That'd be great, Marianne. Can you show us some of your visuals? Can we quickly go through those? We are a little tight for time.
Sorry.
Sherry, can you go back one slide? I think it's pretty obvious what's happening here. Can you quickly bring us through this, Marianne?
So this is good.
That's very clear. Very clear.
Opportunity to be able to show you. We've got the red, the green. We have the when to wear the mask, when not to. The question might be, why would you do the colors over the actual visual? I might teach this at the same time, but I really would gravitate towards the red and the green dot because it just allows you to have a more broad general available, or this is the time to do something, this is not the time to do something. When you're able to kind of teach a general rule like that, you can expand it to other rules too. And another thing is that it's really easy to recreate a red dot and a green dot with a marker even if you need to last minute. It's really hard. I'm horrible at drawing. So, it's a lot easier to be able to do those dots. So you could go ahead to the next slide if you want. I know that I let you know that we use different bathrooms for each of the kids, different bikes they have, and then when they're kind of waiting and they're sitting on the benches, we're encouraging them to keep in those spots as well and not, be moving around. So this is another opportunity to be able to do that. So a good example is I'll offer the choice for the kids. If Johnny says he wants the robot stickers, the ones with the headphones, he loves that one. That's just what he gravitates towards. Anything that has that sticker on it is meant for Johnny. So he's able to walk into the bathroom by himself and know that that's the stall he needs to use. It's also helpful for staff too because it's really easy to mix that kind of stuff up too.
I like that. It's a friendly, more, it's the style, the graphic is more directed towards a student, a child, rather than, names.
Right.
And you had mentioned that sometimes you put Sharpie on them if that's not clear enough. Correct?
Yeah.
Right on the stickers, yeah.
Right. And you're able to kind of wipe that off because maybe, it's someone else's turn to have the robot sticker the next day or something like that.
Gotcha.
But one thing too, you kind of mentioned not writing the name on tape. We could have just put Johnny right on the toilet. But when you're in a school setting, you really want some of your kids to blend in a little bit more. You don't want it to be so obvious they need help.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of a colorful, something that pops and makes it a little more fun.
Yeah, it's relatable.
A lot of the kids don't even recognize that, Johnny needs that visual to know which bathroom is for his.
Right.
Or to know what bike is for him. So I really liked that part about it too. You could go to the next one. I think. All right. So another one of our rules that we kind of had to go with. The picture on the right with the 2 stickers, that's the front entrance when the parents come in. We're not able to have the parents enter our building, so they kind of have to stop at that door. And then when the kids are coming in, we need them to wait right there so that we can take their temperature quick and fill out that wonderful COVID survey. Check, okay.
Right.
Some of our kids are really good at stopping and waiting with their parents, and some of our kids just love our space, and they just fly right through. So it's really helpful to have the actual visual of, I need you to stand. Do you want to stand on the bird or the dragonfly? Giving choices is huge. It really increases compliance. And now they have a space that they have to sit and wait. We're able to kind of do the temperature and move on. And then the picture on the left is just, instead of being able to be face-to-face and a lot of our students are actually nonverbal. So there's waving to help greet up here, and we'll have it on their iPad devices. But instead of being close to a person now, they have to do this and stand outside of the room. So again, that's another just simple visual cue. We're able to kind of move that along.
I like that.
All right. I tried my best to keep this under.
That's okay. Sorry, Marie-Ann. We need to wrap you up.
my top 3 solutions really is just remember behavior is never out of nowhere. When you are at a loss, naturally you're going to stop and ask WTF and think of it as what's the function. And then finally, visual cues can help teach new skills, avoid frustration, and promote independence. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, Marie-Ann. My internet's going a little crazy. I hope everybody can hear me. But I must say I completely relate to what Marie-Ann's situation at home, except multiply that by 3 and Maya are older and eat a lot more and gain more. But seriously, I am learning here too. And I clearly see a need to create more approachable visual cues that kiddos can respond to, whether it's, especially with COVID requirements. I love it. Thanks, Marie-Ann. Let's give her a virtual applause with a peace out. Next up, last but not least, we have Erin. Bring us across the finish line, Erin.
Okay, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciated this opportunity, and like I said, Lori kind of introduced me to you and to the wonderful support that you give to teachers and the learning environment, and I hope that people on this call are getting some great ideas, because I think you've done a wonderful job incorporating fun and creativity into the learning space, so thank you for that. I'm a physical therapist at Attica Central School. I've been working there for 22 years, and I have the privilege of working with Lori every day. She has taught me so much about how to manage a classroom and how to bring creative play into a lesson, and I appreciate her ingenuity and her creativity that she's taught me. Those are things we don't always learn in PT school, so to bring that creative play aspect into my world has been very exciting and very fun for me. And so that's what I'd kind of like to share with you today. You can go to the next slide. So I think we all know, everyone on this call probably knows that physical activity leads to positive effects on cognition, overall health, physical growth and development, mental and emotional well-being, and social peer relations that are so important. And I think we've all seen that COVID has caused a huge pause and a huge gap in this by reducing exposure, to physical activity, definitely increased sedentary technology use. It's restricted peer play opportunities. And I think we're going to see, unfortunately, a lot of regression in our students' physical development abilities. My students typically require physical activity to be introduced to them even more than the general population on a regular basis, or we see regression. I can't imagine what this 4 or 5 months pause is going to be like when we get back. So
yeah, Erin, I've seen a lot of posts on social media about that specific issue. They're coming back very aggressive. They're not used to socializing, and so it's off.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of things that are going to be off, in terms of just from physical endurance to behavior.
Right.
So I think we're really going to have to work hard to close that gap. You can go to the next slide. So I think one way that we can try to close that gap is to increase the exposure to exercise and physical activity, throughout the school day in fun, creative ways. And I know teachers, I think, are going to be anxious because academically they're going to see regression too. But I think in increasing the amount and the exposure to physical activity during the day will help kids reduce that anxiety, that Stephanie talked about. I think it will also lead to increased fun and increased well-being in the students, and hopefully even close that physical gap. So I think if we just integrate that physical activity throughout the day while kids are learning, that's the best way to close that gap that we've seen academically and physically because of COVID so far. So that's kind of just what my talk was today about, and that, you know, in increasing that physical exposure, we're going to increase coordination, balance, agility, strength, and endurance, which is kind of the PT area of things, but also the social opportunities to learn to play among peers, take turns, and understand, you know, how to play in more of a comprehensive environment where there's other kids doing the same thing. And then the sensory stimulation and energy outlets for students who require movement for sensory needs and to promote that proper behavior. You know, kids are going to need to take a physical break to reduce that anxiety and bring that fun, creative play into their school day. And then just basically the opportunity for play. You know, we were hoping that kids would get 60 minutes of play. We were encouraging that, you know, before COVID, and then we were asking kids to stay in their house and taking away their sports teams, and we're taking away play opportunities for recreation. And, you know, those are things that are going to be huge concerns. We need to get that exercise back into their school day. And this is where I think the Fit and Fun Playscapes and what you offer in terms of the rollouts and stickers are going to make it so much easier for teachers to include that fun, creative play into their day. Okay, we can go on to the next slide. Oop, one more back up. And that's kind of the key here, is how to make fun physical activity happen everywhere and anywhere throughout the school day. You know, Lori spoke of using smaller groups, and I think her idea of having you know, the sensory pathways in the hallway is a great idea. Just you have bare footprints, you know, you have different kind of footprints, you hang some vines on the hallway, we put up some stickers of bears, all of a sudden a walk through the hallway becomes a jungle. And can we skip, can we hop, can we crawl, can we step over things? Of course we can. And there we are, having fun physical activity. The kids don't know they're exercising, they just think they're playing. The teachers have a break. We make use of our space. It kind of all comes together by the products that you offer, and they make it easy for a teacher to do that. And, you know, okay, well, now we have something coming up in the school system. We have to clear the hallway. Stickers are removable. Take it down. Next week, instead of a jungle, we have a circus. You know, we have it becomes creative and it becomes fun, and we're working on all those things that we've seen a regression in. So just something to think about and to make it a little bit more creative and a little bit more fun. Okay, you can go to the next slide. So my talk is short, my talk is sweet. It's just about making use of that space throughout the school to allow for smaller groups. You know, we have to all follow those COVID rules, the social distancing, the 12 feet, but let's make it creative, let's make it fun, let's use our space, use the cafeteria, use the hallway. It allows just, you know, if the teacher realizes, you know, their kids are not having a good, you know, an easy time with this lesson, okay, let's take a break, let's take a walk through the jungle. You know, just break it up, make it fun, and then we're going to be hoping to close all those gaps in the meantime. The second thing is to spark imagination. Routine tasks become adventures, where you're just walking through the hallway or waiting in line. You know, let's make it fun. Like I talked about, the jungle, the circus. You know, change it up, make it fun. Things that the kids have to do on the way from the bus to the school. Reduce that anxiety piece by making it a hop, skip, and a jump. You know, putting stickers out on the way to the school. And the kids love to follow a pathway that's colorful and fun instead of just, you know, walking in the line. And all of a sudden school doesn't become so scary. So just a couple thoughts there. And then the third thing is just to increase the opportunity for creative play to be used by teachers throughout the school day. Like I said, I think everyone's going to need a break. So, you know, have those opportunities for fun play. And then also creative lessons can be done in that space. You know, a hopscotch mat is the perfect thing to work on a math lesson. Hopscotch is one of my favorite activities. It works on balance, it works on coordination, it works on eye-hand coordination, it works on agility, it works on strength, all those things that we want to see as a physical therapist or as a PE teacher. We want to see those things happening in a student that's developing and growing, but yet the teacher can use it during a math lesson. So, you know, you toss it to the 1, you toss it to what's 1 plus 2, or you can have them keep track on a whiteboard. Same thing with you can make like a target tossing thing with numbers on it. You're working on hand coordination, but yet becomes a additional math lesson where you keep score, and there's team play. There could be 2 teams. So be creative. Bring that physical activity into your space, into the classroom, and vice versa, and make it fun. And the kids don't even realize they're exercising or even learning, but yet, you know, it's done in a creative, exciting way for them. So I think, Pam, you've done a great job offering things that can help teachers do this, from PE all the way to the classroom. So thank you for this time, and you know, any questions or any other ideas I can offer, I'm happy to do so, but I've also learned a lot in doing this too. So I think going back to school is going to be a challenge for all of us, but these ideas make it easier.
One thing just to jump on Erin, like this was really noticeable to us, like those lines that we talked about on our floor, they're not, I mean, they're colorful, but they're not as fun as your products. But the creativity the kids brought out of our most simple lines, it was really wild to watch them and what the little worlds they create as they're manipulating what we have on the floor. So imagine what levels they're going to bring it to if we had even more interactive.
Right. Right. I mean, our designs, good designs, you don't want to take the creativity away from the students or the teachers. You want to kind of set the stage for that creativity and let their bodies move the way they want them to move, they need them to move, and how you would like them to move. So thanks, Erin. I really appreciate what you said at the end, and I think you were, you know, just spot on how you're taking the limitations brought on by this pandemic and kind of working through it, turning lemons into lemonade. I heard something this morning on the news, take your mess and make a message out of it. I think I got that wrong or something like that. But I really, I get that, you know, I see that you understand it. It's flexibility, it's versatility. That's the name of the game. Let's give Erin a virtual round of applause. And since she's the last one of our panelists, let's give a well-deserved drop the mic to her. We made it. Sherry, if you can go to slide 42 if you're not there already. Perfect. Well, I feel like that went super fast. I know we lost a couple of folks along the way, but we're going to get to the good stuff now, down to the nitty-gritty. I hope everybody's got some, you know, is feeling a little bit better and you got some good ideas churning in your minds. I know that I'm always taking notes every time I talk to this group or any, you know, educators around the country or world that we talk to. And so let's move on to some questions. I see we've got about 15 in so far. Is that right, Todd? Yep. Okay. And so we're going to go with the ones we had sent out an email earlier this week trying to get some background information and get some questions up front. So let's start with some of those because I feel like those folks were waiting a real long time. Tim or Lori, can you answer that question for us?
I'll
let Tim go first.
Being rural right now, you might hear a tractor up on the ridge here behind me. He just plowed right through the back here. So yeah, rural schools, small schools. In our county, we have K-12 buildings. You know, and that's pretty crazy. But at the end of the day, we have these smaller spaces, these older spaces, and I think what you have to do is just, you know, at the end, assess what type of space you have, and then determine, from my perspective, the continuity that you can create between each one. I want to mention something that Erin had talked about, so Stephanie had talked about in relationship to play and creativity. Some of the best creativity comes from our kids. You know, you give them a 4-inch poly spot or a 4-inch colored spot on the ground and say, I forgot, can you show me how to do that again? Can you show me what you can do? And all of a sudden kids will really just blossom with their opportunity. But getting back to the rural part and the lack of funding, quite honestly,
Yeah.
I think you have to be a little bit creative with what you have in your spaces. So for me, right over my right shoulder is the best sensory pathway that ever existed. Right, it's getting outside, being engaged, and being involved with your environment. And, sometimes there's great areas to go in the back 40 behind your school and to use those spaces. So, Lori?
So being in a rural school district, you have limited equipment to start with. So the creativity side comes out, and feed off of the kids' interests, like what's hot in their world. And I know, I'm not a fan of Fortnite, I'm gonna be honest, but those dances that those kids like to celebrate, and we'll play a little game, and
Right.
if you achieve the skill, go ahead, you get to celebrate and do your Fortnite dance, and tap into what interests them, and it doesn't have to involve really expensive equipment. You just got to be a little more creative. So
I was talking to someone the other day, and we were brainstorming some ideas, and they were saying, they don't even know if they're allowed to, take the kids down the street for a walk. And so in terms of a rural school, to my mind, it's, out in the forest, if you've got one, or in the farm. And I remember it was like really early COVID, and everybody, like I said, we're in New York, so everybody was locked down. My 11-year-old really needs to get some activity out. And so he and I, we came up with a sensory pathway outside with things we found in the backyard and in the barn. We have an old barn. And so it was like rope and some bricks and some stuff. And he had so much fun just laying it out. It was a little bit of scavenger hunt and a little bit of, I was trying to keep him focused on stations and how the movements were sequenced and stuff. But they had a good time. I think we can come up with a lot more ideas too here. Like I said, we are recording these questions. So I think that we'll put this together in an email to you folks. Thanks, Tim, for your question, and thanks, Lori and Tim, for answering. Let's go on to the next question. And I think that is just a very common question, because everybody is trying to understand what is required of them, and every school is different, and every budget's different, and every teacher's different. So I think that's probably a Lori question at this point.
So Steve, first of all, how you doing? I'm glad that you were able to join today. I feel like you could have been in this seat because you are amazing. But I think it's a question that everybody has and we're all struggling with. One thing, and I did put this in the chat, my coworker and I, we had a little meeting about this, and whether we are in the gymnasium or in a classroom or outside, we know that we have a resource that was created by Tom Mandera from Victor School. I don't know if you remember, he created a program called +5 Fitness. When Tom created this, the intent was to push meaningful physical activity into the classroom so the kids could have brain breaks right by their desk space. And we have a series of his CDs, and I put them on my iTunes, and we've had them for years. So we're going to bring back +5 Fitness. I was just looking at his Facebook page, and back in 2017, they put an app out, and they said it was $3 at the time, but I've just been looking for it. I can't find the app currently, but I know we can reach out to Tom and ask him what format his +5 Fitness is in now for more people to access it, because I think it's a great solution to this. But again, it's just 5 minutes, but it's a nice way to get started. The minimal space, we have visions of doing mini stations, and each station having very minimal equipment. So it's all very self-guided. Self-guided. It's one-on-one. Me, my equipment, my target, my hula hoop, whatever the challenge is. And my coworker and we started back in February washing equipment prior to kids coming into the gym, hand sanitizer, we did this whole thing back in February when we first heard that this was hitting overseas. So we kind of started the process, and we have an idea of the timeline it takes to clean the equipment in between classes. So we want to use equipment that we can wash. That was another thing that we want to keep our hands on. So that was, I guess my answer to your question is I'm looking for mini stations and just something that I can use, whether I'm in a classroom, in the gymnasium, or outside. I hope that helps. Am I frozen?
Definitely that 10 to 12 distance is again really, really important. That seems to be the consensus in terms of PE. Thanks, Lori. Let's move on to the next question. Dr. Tim, and I think our OTs and PTs and our behavior specialist, Marie Ann, can weigh in a little on this too. Dr. Tim, can you start us off?
You bet. Is that our question from California, maybe? I think there was one piece in there, another one. Anyway, when we're talking about kids, kiddos with severe, profound multiple disabilities, comorbidity with more mobility issues and movement, engagement, I'm always first to go down the sensory path, engage them on a sensory level. So when I talk about sensory path, it's not that physical thing. It's actually engage them from the standpoint of tactile, vestibular, proprioceptive, auditory, visual, those key elements that we need to engage our kids. If we're doing this in a virtual setting or a virtual environment, boy, that's really tough. So you need things that are cause and effect. You need equipment that will engage them, whether it's a homemade piece of equipment such as a shaker bottle, a clear plastic bottle with beads in it, and they can shake it and move it as you move to follow you and pattern, like the copycat game that's up there. That's a perfect example, but that can be done virtually. You can do this, you can do any type of activity depending on their ability to engage you on a virtual level, connecting with their sensory needs. Obviously, you're going to need to engage the parent to help you with that if it's in a virtual space. There was another part of the question that dealt with assessment, Pam, and school districts are not off the hook in regards to U.S. Department of Ed mandates and in regards to assessment. So first and foremost, I would say that you have to get permission, obviously, from the parent. That can be tricky in this situation. They will accept electronic signatures, those types of things, but you want to check with your committee on special ed director, your special ed director, to ensure they should have all that information available to you. Rightslaw.com is a really great website, so detailed, that has tons of information on it that deals with assessment. But there were two most current pieces from the U.S. Department of Ed that speak specifically to Part B and Part C under IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, that mandates that these services, number one, continue, that assessment continues, and that as teachers, we're pressed to engage our students in regards to their progress towards specific IEP goals.
Marie Ann, maybe we can start off with you. Can you lead us on that question?
Sure. This is actually a few of my students that were, they're going to be starting school come fall. Very active. We have 5 minutes of table work, and then we're kind of going out into a space where he could be moving. That's really our structure of a first we're doing some work, and then we're going and doing the movement. And we're actually, the district this child's in has limited it so that his movement breaks that he has almost every 5 minutes is usually going for a quick walk in the hall and doing something like those sensory pathways or a scooter movement. And they're actually limiting him from going into the hall. So part of it is what can we do in that classroom, and I think that's where it's incorporating. I think that's going to be a big struggle, and from me, that's where I was thinking is wow, good opportunity to put some sort of physical sensory pathway, anything like that, in the classroom, right in the classroom, and be able to be changing it up, weekly and having different pathways and something like that. At least it can be in the classroom and not in the hall. So I hope that helped answer some of the question there.
Yeah. What about Erin? Can you weigh in on that?
Yeah. I think this is sometimes where you can pull in technology to increase movement. Sites like Go Noodle, or even auditory music like Lori Berkner Band, or things where, there's auditory, there's visual movement where kids can follow along. It's fun, and it's quick, a song or a little snippet online, there's 2 to 3 minutes. That's all you need, just a little break, and a fun break in that. The other thing I would say would be games, like Simon Says. Spread out, do a quick game of Simon Says, take turns being the leader, depending on what level you're at and what age you're teaching. Those are just, a couple ideas I could quick think off the top of my head. But I like the idea of, creating those sensory pathways throughout the classroom. I mean, you could crawl under a desk, you could march around, you could become a band, you could become a circus, whatever it is in your own classroom space, as long as you have the room to spread out as required.
Thank you. Stephanie, Dr. Stephanie,
Sure.
Can you weigh in on that too?
Everybody has such excellent ideas. I think when I really kind of zone in on the environment and think about the classroom setting, and simplicity is probably the biggest key of maybe not having as many things in the classroom. That would obviously be helpful with trying to have less things to clean and to keep up with that. But when you talk about objects that need to be maintained and cleaned, that is going to be a lot of work if we have more things. So we can use that creativity piece of it by having what Lori mentioned about those video and Erin with technology, like all of those ideas to be able to just do a quick, students do not need very long time frames. 3 to 5 minutes movement and then get back to work. So that pattern is helpful throughout. As Marie Ann mentioned, that first let's do something to get our bodies ready and then let's go to work and go back and forth with that. But absolutely simplicity, I think, is the key in the environment to be able to have less things, but then use your creativity to be able to have the kids play and move during the transitional times that they can throughout the day and incorporate in a schedule. That's the most biggest, I think another takeaway is somehow to put that within a time frame, or of course, if you just see that they're kind of, getting a little wiggly and so forth, and you need that spontaneous break. Yeah.
Right. Thank you so much. That's a great question. Let's put that answer to, how about Lori? Can you answer that question for us?
So you're asking about brain breaks, like during like a lot of sitting time, like Marie Ann was just mentioning, like getting your body ready. And I mean, it could be done really quick. Like what we did daily to get every lesson going. Our older classes levels, we would throw in a Tabata. And I think I could do a Tabata in a classroom setting. I would really structure it so that it can be done next to your desk. But it's just a Tabata is a 4-minute activity where we do 20 seconds of moving at your pace. So a student who is less flexible doesn't have to try to beat, the superstar over here, but they'll still be going through the same activity. So they do 20 seconds of the skill, a 10-second break. You prepare a 4-skill Tabata, and you go through it for 2 rounds. And we've done them daily before our lesson actually started, just to get the kids ready. So this is get our bodies ready, and then this is what we're going to do. And I think I could do a Tabata in a classroom. And our younger kids, it could be simply just playing a little music, and then for 20 seconds we're marching, and then we're gonna jump, and we're gonna hop like a frog, and we're gonna be in that little space. I know people. I was looking at the chat. Somebody was concerned about the number of students, and I know our district is looking at every class is going to be half size. So when I'm making these references, I'm looking at 10 students. If I'm PE in the classroom, I'm in the classroom with 10 students. So for me, I can visualize this space, I can visualize this activity, and that would be something I would lean on for a quick break.
Yep, that's great.
The loss of our gyms, the loss of physical education space. That's an indirect message that says physical education is not valued. That's a concern.
I know.
I have a serious issue about that, and there are many programs around the country that have already cut the physical education along with what they reference as music, art, and PE. Remember that physical education is a direct service under federal mandate, federal law. Physical education, as we know, and physical activity is critical to the health and well-being of all children. So, narrowing that opportunity down, I need something else. We need to advocate with our directors, our school administrators, to say, listen, we need more space. We need to engage this and come up with an answer. And whether I'm outside for part of the day with a beautiful day like today is great, but upstate New York, it is not going to look like this.
Right.
Even by December. So we're going to have to figure out what we're going to be doing in order to engage quality physical education, number one, daily physical activity throughout the day, number two, and number three, can we do it in small space like Lori suggested in the classroom? Having a spot right next to my desk, I can get up, I can stand on it, I can jump on it, I can put one foot on it and run around it one way, run around it the other. I could do the Tabata, I could do go noodle, I could do so many things to prepare my body to learn. Whether I'm clapping my hands to hold a pencil, or whether I'm engaging my body, my whole body, to be able to listen, to attend visually, whatever it happens to be, without the movement, learning isn't going to happen.
So hold on, Lori, and just so we're expecting the expectation, the needs is that, 12 feet apart in the gymnasium. So does that mean 12 feet apart in the classroom, and how is that going to be?
That's what I wanted to talk about, and Amy had brought that up. She said in her district they're trying to figure it out, 6 feet, how are we supposed to do it with 12 feet in a classroom. New York State Health Department guidelines are saying 12 feet for high cardiovascular activities, and it also pertains to musical instruments. So like in band, they also need the 12 feet. So, with, again, my coworker and I, and we're okay, I understand we're planning on being in the classroom. We may be, we don't know, but if we're in the classroom, they're not taking our teaching space. They're using that possible scenario under a COVID guideline to keep the kids from traveling in the hallways. So our teaching space is still our teaching space. It hasn't been taken over. But if we were in the classroom, our plan was to either do a +5 fitness, a Tabata, get the kids moving, get them ready to learn, and then kind of introduce one of our platform assignments that we would be doing in a remote learning setting. Use it as this is what the assignment should look like, this is the kind of space you're going to need as a teachable moment, and then have them take it home as a homework assignment. And then we can talk about it next time we're together. So understanding we're not going to get full activity in that full 30 minutes or 45 minutes that we're with the students within that classroom setting, we're going to be reaching more cognitive lessons, and our physical activity within the lesson will be restrained just because of the space and time that we are confronted with.
Yeah, it's a real challenge. I feel like that's a question where I have to take some time and think about offline, because you know, there's a lot of spatial requirements that are needed. Every classroom's different size. Usually, I think it's like 20 feet by 30 feet. So how does that look like?
Well, I'm thinking about grade level outcomes, specifically, you know, our physical education standards and the grade level outcomes and or goals that we've established. And if you're not familiar with those, make sure you go to shapeamerica.com and you get that information right away. That'll help guide you into your grade level curriculum, kindergarten right on through. Lori, I know you know lots about this, so I'm going to turn it over to you in a second. But at the end of the day, you need to target what those specific goals are. We can move away or off of some of that curriculum that's heavy with manipulatives, objects that need to be cleaned, but we can't move away from fundamental motor skills. We can't move away from movement and motor activities that will help kids be physically active and healthy throughout the day. That's just absolutely critical. But there is some flexibility within the content that you teach in the curriculum and then what you assess on as you go forward. If it's specific to an IEP, specific to a child's fundamental motor skills and or physical activity goals and objectives that you may have, that often is linked to functionality and placement. If they're in general PE, we're going to stick with those grade level outcomes. But if they're in a separate situation, if they're in an adapted PE class or they're more removed from the general PE setting and have those IEP goals, you need to make sure those goals are functional and you're able to work on those in the capacity of the environment that you're in.
I think Tim's spot on. I think there's a lot of flexibility within the way that the standards are written to reach the assessment values that we need. But I think going back into this, I think we need to keep in mind that this is going to be a fluid situation. It's not going to be a permanent and forever. So we only have to get through, you know, I'm gonna go with a few months, and I know that's not a real hard date because it could be November, January, it could be April, and all of the guidelines are going to change as we go along through the time. But I would say start with the basic, the fundamental skills. Keep with things that the students will have success on, and keep building them up and keep building those relationships so they stay with you. Like, you've got to keep them connected, because if we throw stuff at them that they can't connect with, we're going to lose them altogether. You're not going to be able to assess anything. So I think we almost have to go in, really take a step back, go in small, build it up, build a nice strong base, and then you can assess more higher level skills as we get a little bit closer to the students where we can be face to face.
Erin, I'm not sure if that's something you can answer for us, but, you know, telemed, Marianne, I know you spoke about a little about that too. How are assessments happening across the board from any of you? And I know, Lori, you have to go, so.
I do. I want to thank you, everyone. I do have to run, but thank you, everyone. And Pam has my contact information, so if you have any more questions, I will reply. So I got to go, but thank you again, and goodbye.
Perfect. Thanks, Lori. So how are we assessing students remotely? You know, that's got to be a real challenge.
I'll just address this quick. There are some issues about assessment as it relates to the validity of the assessment virtually, and there are some questions about that in terms of the data collection and the way you actually do that. Most assessments, they're asking teachers to be face-to-face as it relates to qualification for services. But if we're talking about assessment as it relates to progress or present level of performance, that could be done in a variety of ways. Erin, others?
I'm finding it a big challenge because a lot of what I do is hands-on, and you know, our district is requiring plexiglass between the person giving the test and the student right now. That's difficult for me as a physical therapist. So this is a huge question in my mind, to be honest. I'm hoping that it works out. I mean, there are some of, I use the Brunix as an assessment tool, and there are some things I can do. I think a lot of it's going to just have to be visual modeling from a distance, and what I can see, from that distance. I don't know. It's going to be a work in progress, I think.
So I'm, like I said, I'm always listening and learning. I've seen a lot of posts about, and a lot of companies are doing take-home kits for PE, and of course everybody's trying to bring the most affordable options for a remote learning or hybrid situation. So in terms of assessment, is that something that could be kitted up, or could there be a package of tools that could provide, where it gets sent home through the mail, and then there's an assessment, and PT, OT, or PE could telemed and or FaceTime and see how it's going and perform their assessment?
We have a current project right now with Golisano Children's Hospital and our local Racker preschool local community, where we're using or tapping existing teleservices to promote physical activity. We had a discussion actually this morning about assessment and how we could use, for example, Aaron, we use the TGMD3 test of gross motor development, which is fundamental motor skills. It has some object control in it. And so basically, I'm losing my battery. Basically, that we're able to access and use some of that literature and best practice as it relates to doing screening. But full assessments, I'm not sure if that's been validated in regards to the actual procedural reliability and ultimately validity of the data when it's done in a virtual manner versus face-to-face.
Right.
Interesting. Marie Ann, you talked a lot about the importance of visual cues during your presentation. Can you speak even, Daniel looks like he was looking for like a PE reference, but you integrate physical activity into your sessions all the time. So can you speak a little bit about that? And Daniel, you can chat in and see if we're answering your question detailed enough or specifically enough.
Yeah, and I think that I definitely use more of the visual cues. I think that a tactile cue, with what I'm understanding, is it's probably not something that I use a whole lot. That someone else could probably answer a little better with that. Other than, really thinking outside of the box with those things. It's difficult because it's hard to supply everything you need to the family. So, Tim or, I was thinking, who is it? Stephanie.
Yep, Stephanie, I think she had to go too,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah, I think she would be able to better answer that.
That's okay, and we can take that question offline and detail it and push them forward to everybody. I'm thinking in terms of tactile cues.
The only thing I could think of is, the good thing is some of my students who need tactile cues, to keep their balance during certain things or use proper positioning during certain exercises. A lot of them I've been lucky enough to teach the parents ahead of time, so the parents, knew how to do it properly and can do it with them. And hopefully, you can get lucky enough that your student is in a household where the parents can do it with them or know how to do that. That is a struggle. That was a struggle for me, as a physical therapist, because when I'm trying to teach a student who has processing trouble how to do a proper push-up, it's very difficult unless you're there giving them, a cue here and a cue here. I guess that visual modeling has to take over. Hopefully you have the ability to do it with them visually, online, and follow me, look at my back, look at my arms, do what I'm doing, try to mirror me, do the same thing I'm doing. If you don't have that parent there, hopefully they can follow along with at least a visual model. but that's a tough one. That's a big obstacle for me as a physical therapist.
Yeah.
On the tactile thing, cause and effect. Any opportunity you can do that promotes cause and effect, whether it's a button that hits makes a sound, whether it's the sound stepper that makes a sound, whether I stomp on it, I sit on it, I touch it, I smash it, do what I do. Oh, I forgot how to do that. Can you show me? These are all cues and little things that will prompt, not only when you're in a virtual space, will prompt not only the child, but sometimes we have to ask the parent to, like, don't do it for them. They're right there doing it. Like, no, let them do it on their own. So again, like Aaron said, it's going back to, working with the parents, communicating with the parents, and making sure that when we're talking about kiddos with more significant behavioral and disabilities, it's I go to a sensory mode right away.
Yeah, I'm thinking, at home, what do you have around the house? Sponges, a hairbrush, for tactile cues, smooth versus rough, things like that, things that a family could just kind of, every family has and can work with the movement or skill that or lesson that is being, needs to happen at the home. And I think though,
most children will have a preference of what they like and what they avoid. So frame it, from those perspectives too.
That's interesting. Okay.
And Pam, I just wanted to kind of also to kind of a lot of what I'm hearing is it's that parent training piece. And I know when we were doing remote, even though our sessions should have been about an hour with the individual, I spent a lot of time before those sessions talking to the parents and really, when I had my registered behavior technicians doing some of the work remotely for an hour, there was so much prep work before because it really needed, I had to let them know, instead of expecting the parents to run 10 different programs during an hour, we really had to back off and just have the parents be successful at teaching one program. And bring, you're eliminating, they're like, oh, but they keep getting out of the seat, and the parents are just kind of letting them get out of the seat. And, and I'm like, but did focus on one skill during that session and bring down all these expectations. What is the priority during that session? And really help teach the parent that one skill. When you're expecting, I also explained to a lot of the parents, we're expecting them to come in as PTs, as OTs, as behavior technicians, and just do our job. And they don't have all of the experience that we do. So, I couldn't go in as a doctor. If you told me what to do with my daughter, I couldn't do those things. So really just empathizing with the families and spending that time focusing on that one skill and breaking it down.
I think that's really helpful, even, just understanding that parent perspective. As a parent myself, my son, I quickly realized that his ADD also turned to, was very specific to things. And so he would have a question to answer, and it was multiple parts, but it wasn't broken down like, A, B, C. It was just, answer this, comma this, comma this. He would answer only the first part. And I was getting a little frustrated. And I realized, like, that's where his mind is going. And I helped him. I broke it down into A, B, and C. And then you go and you check off A, B, C. But as a parent, not in the classroom, I do have a good relationship with the teachers. And I advocate, and we're in good communication. It was a challenge. Like, I didn't realize the needs that he required to be a successful student, and luckily he is. So when you're dealing with students with even more significant needs, I think it's very overwhelming for parents, and I could totally see, like, a parent training session needs to happen if it's not already happening. I'm wondering, is that something that occurs or not usually?
Yeah, Marianne, we know we're planning a fall parent training for our sensory-based activities. Number one, to celebrate the families, celebrate their work, celebrate the time, celebrate their individual stories, and let them share. And then, secondly, to provide a window of training 10, 15 minutes of information, shared resources that we're going to give through part of our, what we reference as our Sensory Fit Families project, which is part of the Golisano and Racker Center project that Marianne is with me on.
That's great. Is that what the pre-K play rollouts?
Yes, the pre-K play, and I sent you a video of a little one engaged.
I saw it,
which is so cute.
I saw it. It's just wonderful.
Yeah, so good stuff there. And like I said, I use those vinyl rollouts as assessment. For me, that's a go-to, just to be observing, watching kids move authentically.
Yeah,
really
authentically.
Authentic assessment, watching them move, how they move, what they do, and what they avoid. Big thing, what they avoid.
That's a good point. That's a good point. It's kind of like, gotta wear masks, and but how is that gonna function in a PE world environment? And I think that's the big question.
Mask. And
what can they do?
Right,
yeah.
Mask and the clear visor, or a clear visor so kids can see when you're speaking. That's often a big one because they're visual versus auditory. Marianne, you know that. Aaron? You know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Really comes back to that same question of what can we do, what can we not do, and then what's left over. What is it that we can do safely? And it seems to come back to, individual stations or circuits, socially distant apart. And it sounds like the focus, from at least my point of view, is, and what I'm seeing on social media is, it's more of a focus on wellness and mindfulness, and and fitness, but not really one-on-one or obviously no contact lessons. Is that correct, team?
Yeah, Pam, I've shared with you my preference. I love your spots, your sticker spots, just the spots, and then the color coordinated lines. So if it's a red, yellow, blue, green, I've got 46, 48 spots, 12 feet apart in my gym space. If I have my gym space, kids come in, they stand on their particular spot. We'll do Go Noodle. We'll do some sort of instant activity because they walk in, they know right where they have to go find a spot, and it's 12 feet from everybody else. But if I look down and I'm on blue, I know when I transition to my activity, I go to the blue line with my 3 other classmates, and then I start my activity, which might be a vinyl rollout or might be something there. I'm on a routine, so it's 45 seconds or 60 seconds or 90 seconds, depending on what the activity is, and then they continue through that activity until we hit the prompt that says, hey, time to rotate, and then we rotate as a group to the next one. Everybody slides up one. And then when we come back to our spots, everybody gets another spot and goes from there. But giving kids those visual cues to help them physically distance and not socially distance is important.
Okay. Aaron or Tim, maybe you can step in on that question. It's a loaded question, right?
At the
in terms of sanitizing between, I'm not sure.
Oh, go ahead, Aaron. I'm sorry. My bad.
No, I just wasn't sure what he meant. What his question was, how to sanitize in between, or which equipment to use.
She didn't elaborate. It says, what would you recommend for equipment sharing? So I think what she's saying is what equipment can be shared. I'm just envisioning. My short answer is things that hands aren't touching and faces aren't touching. I don't know if you have any other suggestions for Charlie.
One drives the other. Curriculum is what's going to drive the equipment. So know what you're going to teach, then you know what you need to get, and then you know how to clean it. So, or you know how many you need. So that's what we're doing, obviously at the college with our physical activity classes, which are face-to-face with equipment. We know what the curriculum is going to be. We know what we're going to teach. And so we set it up. So if we have 24 rackets, we've got 24 rackets, right? And if we only have 12, we're going to have to wipe them down in between before we hand them down. There's a whole procedure that goes with that, you know, and it all depends on the age level of your kiddos as to their ability to navigate some of those instructions as it relates to cleaning and cleaning effectively.
Before everybody goes, I want to just say how thankful we are for our panelists and all these attendees. This was our first ever virtual meeting, and the response was enormous, and we really hope it was of value to you. I want to say here at Fit and Fun, we have been working with schools for quite some time now. It's just about 10 years, and I'm so happy to see many customers and colleagues, social media friends here. We've always viewed our relationship with our customers as a partnership. The panelists here, I did not prompt them to use our products. They're just naturally, there's a connection there. We view our customers as partners that recognize the importance of physical activity, wellness, and health in children's lives. We hope to continue to respond to the needs of schools and your students, and we have lots of new ideas in development to continue to make school a great place to learn. We're looking at more economical choices as well. We were hoping that you could take a look at our website soon, or when there comes a time when you need engaging, colorful activities and graphics for your kiddos. All of our products are made, designed, or printed here right in the U.S. So that means it's quality materials and inks that meet stringent safety and performance standards. You'd also be supporting a small local business as well, so we appreciate that. If you have any questions, just email us at robbierobot at fitandfunllc.com. Sherry, could you put up the next slide so they can catch that? Perfect, thank you. And if you can visit our website or follow us on social media channels, we're always posting new resources, many of which are free. We've got, like I said, some new fresh ideas coming up, helpful tips we post. We do giveaways. We have a lot of fun with those, and we try to provide a discount on a monthly basis. But I'm going to end it again, and thank you really once again for everyone joining us. Thank you to our panelists. You are awesome. And I look forward to working with everybody here on this call. Again, reach out to us if you have any questions, and stay strong, be safe, and we really might do this again real soon sometimes. Okay?
Thanks, Pam. Happy birthday.
Oh, yes. Happy birthday to me.
Happy birthday.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks again.
Bye.
Okay, bye.